The woman's fingers dug into the dirt as she dragged herself forward, leaving a crimson trail across the dry Wyoming earth that stretched toward the distant ranch house like a prayer written in blood. Katherine Pierce had been riding for 3 days straight when the ambush happened. She had been carrying documents from her father's law office in Cheyenne to a settlement near Rock Springs, a journey she had made dozens of times before without incident. But this time, 5 men had been waiting at the narrow pass through the red rocks, their faces covered with bandanas, their intentions clear the moment they fired the first shot. Her horse had gone down immediately, and Katherine had felt the bullet tear through her side as she tumbled into the sagebrush. She had played dead among the rocks while they rifled through her saddlebags, cursing when they found nothing of value except the legal papers they tossed into the wind. When they finally rode off, she had waited until the sound of hooves faded completely before she dared to move. The ranch house had appeared on the horizon like a mirage after she had been crawling for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through her body, and the June sun beat down mercilessly on her back. The pale blue dress she wore was now stained dark with blood and dirt, the fabric torn and ruined. Her hands were raw and bleeding from dragging herself across the rocky ground, but she kept moving because stopping meant dying, and Katherine Pierce was not ready to die. She was 22 years old with her whole life ahead of her, and she refused to let those bastards be the end of her story. Lucas Kane was mending fence line near the barn when he saw something moving in the distance. At first, he thought it might be a wounded animal, but as he shaded his eyes against the afternoon glare, he realized with horror that it was a person. He dropped his tools and ran, his long legs covering the distance in less than a minute. When he reached her, she had collapsed face down in the dirt, her breathing shallow and labored. "Madam, Madam, can you hear me?" Lucas dropped to his knees beside her and gently turned her over. She was young and pretty despite the dirt and blood covering her face, with dark hair that had come loose from its pins and hazel eyes that fluttered open briefly to look at him with desperate hope before closing again. The blood on her dress was fresh and still flowing from somewhere beneath the fabric. "Jesus Christ," he breathed, and without another moment's hesitation, he gathered her into his arms and stood. She was lighter than he expected, or perhaps his fear gave him extra strength. He carried her quickly toward the house, taking the steps 2 at a time and kicking open the door he had left unlocked as always. There was rarely trouble this far out, though clearly that had changed today. He brought her to his bedroom since it was the closest, laying her carefully on the patchwork quilt his mother had made before she passed. The blood immediately began to seep into the fabric, but he did not care about that now. "Hold on," he told her, even though she appeared unconscious. "Just hold on for me." Lucas had been alone on this ranch for 2 years, ever since his father had died of pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. He was 25 now, and he had learned to be self-sufficient in all things, including basic medical care for both animals and himself. He had sewn up wounds before, set broken bones, treated fevers and infections. But he had never dealt with a gunshot wound on a woman who might die in his bed if he did not work quickly. He ran to the kitchen and pumped water into a basin, grabbed the bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, collected clean rags and his sewing kit. His hands shook slightly as he returned to the bedroom, but he forced himself to be calm. Panic would not save her. "Please, God," Lucas whispered as he began to carefully cut away the blood-soaked fabric of her dress. "Please let me save her. I know I have not been to church in a while, and I know I have sinned more than my share, but please do not let this woman die. She deserves better than this. Please." It was not a sophisticated prayer, but it came from the depths of his soul as he worked. The bullet had entered her left side, just above her hip. When he carefully turned her, he found with relief that it had exited out her back. That was good. It meant he would not have to dig for the bullet. But she had lost a lot of blood, and the wounds needed to be cleaned and closed. Lucas poured whiskey over his hands, then over the entry and exit wounds. She moaned and stirred slightly, which he took as a good sign. Unconscious was better than dead. He threaded his needle with steady hands despite his racing heart and began to stitch. He had done this on livestock, on his father, on himself, once after a particularly nasty fall. But never on someone so delicate, never on someone whose life felt so precious in his hands. "You are going to be fine," he told her as he worked, keeping his voice low and soothing. "I am going to fix you up, and you are going to tell me your name, and we are going to figure out who did this to you. You are going to be fine." The stitching took nearly an hour. By the time he finished both wounds and wrapped clean bandages around her middle, he was sweating and exhausted. He cleaned the blood from her face and hands as best he could without disturbing her further, then covered her with a light blanket. Her breathing seemed a bit stronger now, her color slightly better. Or perhaps that was just wishful thinking. Lucas sat in the chair by the bed and watched her breathe. The sun was setting outside, painting the room in shades of gold and orange. He realized he had been so focused on saving her that he had not even thought about whether those who shot her might come looking to finish the job. He stood and retrieved his rifle from above the fireplace, checked that it was loaded, and set it within easy reach. Then he returned to his vigil. She did not wake that night. Lucas dozed in the chair, starting awake every time she made a sound, checking her pulse and her bandages. Sometime around midnight, he changed the dressings when he noticed blood seeping through. Sometime around dawn, he felt her forehead and was relieved to find it cool. No fever yet, which was a blessing. As the sun rose on a new day, Lucas allowed himself to really look at her. She had delicate features and strong cheekbones, and there was something about the set of her jaw even in sleep that suggested determination and spirit. Her hands, though roughened by her ordeal, were well kept, the hands of someone who worked but was not accustomed to manual labor. She wore a simple gold ring on her right hand but nothing on her left. Not married then, or perhaps widowed. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "And what happened out there?" As if in answer to his question, her eyes opened. She stared at the ceiling for a moment, confusion clear in her expression, then turned her head to look at him. Their eyes met, and Lucas felt something shift in his chest, something he could not quite name. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse and barely above a whisper. "My ranch about 10 miles southeast of Green River. I am Lucas Kane. I found you crawling toward my house yesterday afternoon. You have been shot." She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. "I remember. 5 men at the pass. They shot my horse. They shot me." Her hand moved to her side, touching the bandages through the blanket. "Did you?" "I stitched you up. The bullet went clean through, which is lucky. You lost a lot of blood, but I think you will be all right if infection does not set in. Can you tell me your name?" Katherine Pierce." "My father is Edmund Pierce, an attorney in Cheyenne. I was carrying documents to Rock Springs when—" She trailed off, and he saw tears forming in her eyes. "They killed my horse. She was a good horse. She did not deserve that." "No, she did not," Lucas agreed gently. "I am sorry for your loss." "Do you know why they ambushed you? Was it robbery?" "They were looking for something specific in my saddlebags. When they did not find it, they seemed angry, but I do not know what they wanted. I was just carrying legal papers, property deeds, and contracts. Nothing valuable unless you were one of the parties involved." She tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain, her face going pale. "Easy now," Lucas said, standing quickly to help her lie back down. You need to stay still. Those stitches are fresh, and if you tear them open, you will bleed again. How long have I been here? Since yesterday afternoon. It is morning now, just after dawn. Katherine closed her eyes again. My father will be worried. I was supposed to arrive in Rock Springs 2 days ago. He will think I am dead. As soon as you are strong enough, I will ride to Green River and send a telegram. But right now, you need to rest and heal. Are you hungry? Thirsty? Thirsty, she admitted. Lucas brought her water and helped her drink, supporting her head carefully. She drank deeply, and some color returned to her cheeks. When she finished, she looked at him with those hazel eyes, and again he felt that strange flutter in his chest. You saved my life, she said simply. Thank you. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said with surprising firmness. Not everyone. You could have left me out there. Some people would have. Or you could have. She did not finish the sentence, but Lucas understood. A woman alone and helpless was vulnerable in more ways than one, and there were men who would take advantage of that. I would never, he said quietly. You are safe here, Miss Pierce. I give you my word. Something in his voice must have convinced her because she relaxed slightly against the pillows. Katherine, she corrected. Please call me Katherine. I think when a man saves your life and stitches up your bullet wound, formality is a bit silly. He smiled despite himself. Lucas, then. Just Lucas. All right, just Lucas, she said, and he saw the ghost of a smile on her lips before exhaustion claimed her again and she drifted back to sleep. Lucas watched her for a moment longer, then quietly left the room to make breakfast and begin his morning chores. The cattle still needed tending, the horses needed feeding, and life on a ranch did not stop just because he had an injured woman in his bed. But his mind kept drifting back to her as he worked, to the courage it must have taken to crawl all that distance with a bullet wound, to the trust in her eyes when she had thanked him. He found himself working faster than usual, eager to get back to the house to check on her. This was foolish, he told himself. She was a stranger, someone who would leave as soon as she was well enough. He had no business developing any kind of attachment. But he could not help remembering the weight of her in his arms, the way her hand had felt when he cleaned the dirt and blood away, the sound of her voice saying his name. When he returned to the house around mid-morning, she was awake again. She had managed to prop herself up slightly against the pillows, though the effort had clearly cost her. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and she was breathing harder than she should be. You should not be moving, he said, setting down the basket of eggs he had collected. I needed to sit up a little. Lying flat was making me dizzy. She looked at him, then at the room around her. This is your bedroom, is it not? Where did you sleep? In the chair right there. That cannot have been comfortable. This is your house. I should not be taking your bed. Lucas shrugged. You needed it more than I did. I have slept in worse places. There was a year I spent more nights on the ground than in a bed. A chair for one night is nothing. Katherine studied him with open curiosity. How long have you had this ranch? It was my father's. I grew up here. When he died 2 years ago, it became mine. It is not much, just a few hundred acres and enough cattle to make a living, but it is home. Do you run it alone? I have a hand named Tom who comes by 3 times a week to help with the heavy work, but mostly yes, it is just me. That must be lonely. Lucas had not expected her to say that, and he found he did not have a ready answer. The truth was that yes, it was lonely, especially in the long winter months when the snow piled high and he could go weeks without seeing another soul. But he had learned to live with the loneliness, had even convinced himself that he preferred the solitude. I keep busy enough that I do not notice, he said finally. Katherine looked like she wanted to say something else, but another wave of pain crossed her face and she closed her eyes, breathing through it. Let me check your bandages, Lucas said, moving closer. She nodded, and he carefully lifted the blanket and her borrowed nightshirt. He had changed her out of the ruined dress while she was unconscious, dressing her in one of his clean shirts. It hung large on her frame but was more comfortable than the destroyed dress. The bandages showed some blood spotting but nothing alarming. "It looks all right. The bleeding has mostly stopped. How is the pain?" "Bearable," she said, but he could tell she was lying. "I have laudanum if you need it." "No, I want to keep my wits about me. I have heard too many stories of people becoming dependent on that stuff." "A small dose for pain is not going to hurt you." I said no. There was steel in her voice now, and Lucas recognized the stubborn streak. He had one himself. "All right. But if it gets too bad, you tell me. There is no virtue in suffering needlessly." He pulled the blanket back up and went to make her some broth. She needed to eat to regain her strength, but solid food might be too much for her stomach right now. Over the next few days, Lucas fell into a routine. He would wake early and do the most essential chores, then come back to check on Katherine. He would change her bandages, bring her food and water, help her with the necessities that she was too weak to manage alone. She bore it all with remarkable grace, though he could see the embarrassment in her eyes at having to depend on him for such intimate care. "I am sorry," she said on the third day as he helped her sit up to eat. "This must be so much trouble for you." "It is not trouble," he assured her. "You are healing well. The wounds look clean, no sign of infection. You were very lucky." "Lucky," she repeated with a bitter laugh. "I suppose lucky is one way to put it. Lucky to be shot but not killed. Lucky to find your ranch. Lucky to have you be the kind of man who helps instead of hurts." "Katherine," he said gently, "you are going to be fine. In another week or two you will be back on your feet. Your father will come for you and you will go home, and this will just be a bad memory." She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Is that what you want?" "For me to leave as soon as possible." The question caught him off guard. The truth was that no, he did not want her to leave. Over the past few days, he had come to enjoy her company more than he cared to admit. She was intelligent and quick-witted, and when she was not in pain, she had a sharp sense of humor that made him laugh. The house felt less empty with her in it, less lonely, but he could not say any of that. "I want you to be well," he said carefully. "That is what matters." Katherine held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you for everything. I know I have said it before, but I mean it. You did not have to do any of this." "Yes, I did," Lucas said simply. "It is the right thing to do." That evening, after Lucas had finished his chores and Katherine had eaten a decent meal of stew and bread, they sat together in companionable silence. He had brought a chair from the kitchen and sat beside the bed, reading aloud from a book of poems he had found on his father's shelf. Katherine listened with her eyes closed, a small smile on her lips. "You have a good voice," she said when he paused. "Calming. My mother used to read to me when I was a boy. I suppose I learned from her. Tell me about her. Your mother." Lucas set the book aside. "She was strong. She had to be, living out here. But she was also kind, always taking in stray animals, always helping neighbors when they needed it. She made this ranch feel like a home, not just a place to work. When she died, it was like the light went out of the house." "How old were you?" 15. "It was sudden, a fever that came on fast and took her in less than a week. My father was never quite the same after. He kept the ranch running, but his heart was not in it anymore. I think he was just waiting to join her." Katherine reached out and took his hand, squeezing gently. "I am sorry. That must have been so hard." The touch was innocent, meant only as comfort, but Lucas felt it like a spark of electricity running up his arm. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face, and saw that she felt it too. The air between them seemed to shift, to become charged with something new and fragile. "Katherine," he began, not sure what he was going to say, "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too." They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, just looking at each other. Then Katherine winced, and the spell was broken as the pain reminded them both of why she was there. "You should rest," Lucas said, reluctantly pulling his hand away. "You need your strength to heal. Will you stay? Just for a little while longer, of course." He stayed until she fell asleep, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, trying to understand what was happening to him. He had known her for 3 days. 3 days. It was absurd to feel this way about someone he barely knew. But there was no denying the pull he felt toward her, the way his heart lifted every time she smiled, the way he found himself thinking about her even when he was supposed to be focused on his work. This was dangerous territory. She was injured and vulnerable, dependent on him for her very survival. It would be wrong to act on these feelings, wrong to take advantage of the situation. And besides, she was Edmund Pierce's daughter, a lawyer's daughter from Cheyenne. She lived in town, probably in a nice house with servants and society. What could he offer her? A lonely ranch in the middle of nowhere, a life of hard work and isolation. She deserved better than that. But even as he thought these things, he could not shake the memory of her hand in his, the look in her eyes that said she felt the same strange connection he did. The next morning, Katherine insisted on getting out of bed. Lucas tried to talk her out of it, but she was determined. "I cannot just lie here forever," she said firmly. "I need to move to regain my strength. Help me to the chair, at least." Against his better judgment, Lucas helped her stand. She swayed dangerously, and he caught her, his arm going around her waist to support her weight. She leaned against him, her head resting on his chest for just a moment, and he could feel her heart beating against his ribs. "Easy," he murmured. "Take your time." They made it to the chair in slow, shuffling steps. By the time Katherine sat down, she was pale and sweating, but there was triumph in her eyes. "See, I did it. You are incredibly stubborn. I prefer determined." Lucas laughed despite himself. "Of course you do." He brought her a blanket and tucked it around her, then went to make breakfast. When he returned with eggs and toast, he found her looking out the window at the Wyoming landscape stretching away in all directions. "It is beautiful here," she said. "Harsh but beautiful. I can see why you love it." "It gets in your blood," Lucas agreed, setting the tray on her lap. "I have been to other places, but I always want to come back here. There is something about the wide open spaces, the way you can see for miles, the way the sky seems bigger here than anywhere else." "Tell me about those other places you have been." So he did. As they ate, he told her about the cattle drive he had gone on when he was 19, all the way up to Montana. He told her about the time he had spent in Denver, working odd jobs and trying to decide if city life suited him. He told her about the year he had spent as a ranch hand in Colorado, learning from an old cowboy who knew more about horses than any man he had ever met. Katherine listened with rapt attention, asking questions, laughing at the funny stories, gasping at the dangerous ones. And then she told him about her life. She had grown up in Cheyenne, the only daughter of a widowed attorney. Her mother had died when she was young, and her father had raised her himself, unusual in an age when most men would have sent a daughter to live with relatives. But Edmund Pierce had adored his daughter and had given her opportunities most women never got. He had taught her to read law books, to think critically, to argue a case. She had even served as his clerk for the past few years, which was how she had ended up making that fateful ride to Rock Springs. "He treats me like a partner," she said with obvious pride. "Most people think it is scandalous, a woman working in a law office, but my father does not care what people think. He says I have a better legal mind than half the men he went to school with." "I believe it," Lucas said. "You certainly have the argumentative streak." She threw a piece of toast at him, which he caught with a grin. As the days passed and Katherine grew stronger, they fell into an easy companionship. She spent more time out of bed, sitting in the chair or on the porch when the weather was nice. Lucas taught her to play chess with an old set his father had carved, and they spent the evenings locked in fierce competition. She was a quick learner and beat him more often than he cared to admit. "You let me win that last one," she accused one night. "I did not." "You did. I saw that move you could have made with your bishop. You let me have your queen." Lucas grinned. "Maybe I just wanted to see you smile. You have a good smile." Katherine blushed, the color rising in her cheeks in a way that made his heart skip. "That is cheating." "How is that cheating?" "Flattery as a distraction tactic. Highly unethical." "All is fair in love and chess," Lucas said, then froze as he realized what he had said. The word love hung in the air between them like a living thing. Katherine was very quiet for a moment, studying the chessboard with great concentration. Then she looked up at him, and her expression was serious. "Lucas, I need to ask you something. Anything. Why have you not sent that telegram to my father yet?" It was a question he had been dreading. The truth was that he had been finding excuses not to ride into town, not to send word of her whereabouts. He told himself it was because she was not strong enough yet, that her father would want to rush out here and move her before she was ready. But deep down, he knew the real reason. He did not want this to end. He did not want her to leave. "I wanted to make sure you were well enough first," he said, which was at least partially true. "I am well enough now. The wounds are healing nicely. I can walk without getting dizzy. It has been over a week." "My father must be beside himself with worry." "You are right," Lucas admitted. "I will ride into Green River tomorrow and send the telegram. I am sorry. I should have done it sooner." Katherine reached across the chessboard and took his hand. "Why did you wait?" He could have lied. He should have lied. But when he looked into her eyes, he found he could not. "Because I did not want you to leave. I know that is selfish. I know you have a life in Cheyenne and people who love you and are worried about you. But these past 2 weeks have been the happiest I have been in a long time, and I was not ready for it to end." Her hand tightened on his. "Lucas, I need to tell you something too. I do not want to leave either. When my father gets that telegram, he is going to come here immediately. He is going to take me back to Cheyenne, and I will probably never see you again. And the thought of that makes me feel like I am being shot all over again." "Katherine," he breathed, then pulled her to her feet and into his arms. She came willingly, pressing herself against him despite the twinge of pain from her still healing wounds. He cupped her face in his hands and looked at her, really looked at her, memorizing every detail. Then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing this new territory. But then Katherine made a small sound in the back of her throat and kissed him back with a fierceness that took his breath away. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he wrapped his arms around her, careful of her injury but unable to resist the pull of her. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Katherine's eyes were bright, her lips swollen from his kisses, and Lucas thought she had never looked more beautiful. "I think I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "Is that crazy? We have known each other for 2 weeks." "If it is crazy, then we are both crazy," Lucas said, pressing his forehead to hers. "Because I am falling in love with you too. I have been falling since the moment I saw you." They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, both of them acutely aware that the clock was ticking, that tomorrow he would send that telegram and their time together would begin to end. "Come with me," Katherine said suddenly, pulling back to look at him. "To Cheyenne. You could sell this ranch or hire someone to run it. We could be together." Lucas felt his heart twist. "I cannot leave here, Katherine. This ranch is all I have, all I know. It is my father's legacy, my mother's memory. I know it is not much compared to what you are used to, but it is home." "Then I will stay," she said immediately. "I will stay here with you. And do what? Live out here in the middle of nowhere, miles from everything you know. What about your father, your work, your life in Cheyenne? I would give it all up for you." "No," Lucas said firmly, even though it cost him to say it. "I will not let you do that. You love your work. You have opportunities that most women never get. I will not be the reason you give that up. You would resent me eventually, and I could not bear that." Tears were streaming down Catherine's face now. "So what are we supposed to do? Just say goodbye and pretend this never happened?" "I do not know," Lucas admitted, his own voice rough with emotion. "I do not have an answer. All I know is that I love you, and I want you to be happy, even if that means being happy without me." Katherine pulled away from him and wiped at her tears angrily. "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. You love me, I love you, and your solution is to just give up. I am not giving up. I am being realistic. We live in different worlds, Katherine. It is not just about what we want. There are practical considerations." "I hate practical considerations," she said fiercely. Then she winced and put a hand to her side, and Lucas immediately moved to support her. "You need to rest. We are not supposed to be having this conversation yet anyway. You are still healing. Stop trying to take care of me and listen to me. I do not care about practical. I do not care that this does not make sense. When I was lying in that dirt, bleeding and thinking I was going to die, I promised myself that if I survived, I would not waste my life being practical. I would do what made me happy. And you, Lucas Kane, you make me happy. Happier than I have ever been." Lucas felt something break open inside his chest. He pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. "You make me happy too. God, you make me so happy. But I do not want you to make a decision you will regret. If you stay, there is no going back. Ranch life is hard, especially for a woman. The winters are brutal. The nearest neighbor is miles away. You would be giving up so much." Or, Katherine said, pulling back to look at him with determination in her eyes, "I would be gaining everything that matters. Lucas, I know we have not known each other long. I know this seems fast and maybe even reckless, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I want to be with you. I want to build a life with you. And if that means learning to be a rancher's wife, then that is what I will do." "Are you sure? Absolutely sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." Lucas kissed her again, longer this time, pouring all of his love and hope and fear into it. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers and said, "All right, we will figure this out together. But first, I need to send that telegram. Your father deserves to know you are alive and safe." "I know. You are right. Just promise me something, anything. Promise me we will find a way, that no matter what my father says or what obstacles we face, we will find a way to be together." "I promise," Lucas said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. The next morning, Lucas rode into Green River. It was a small town, barely more than a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a few other buildings. The telegraph office was in the general store, run by a friendly man named Harold, who was also the postmaster and the unofficial keeper of all the town's gossip. "Morning, Lucas," Harold said when he walked in. "What brings you to town? I have not seen you in weeks." "I need to send a telegram to Cheyenne. To Edmund Pierce, the attorney." Harold's eyebrows rose. "Edmund Pierce? That is a name I have not heard in a while. What is this about?" Lucas hesitated. Once he sent this telegram, the whole town would know about Katherine within hours. Harold was a nice enough man, but he could not keep a secret to save his life. But there was no help for it. Edmund Pierce needed to know his daughter was alive. His daughter was ambushed on the road about 2 weeks ago. She was shot, but managed to make it to my ranch. She is recovering well, but I thought her father should know where she is." Harold's eyes went wide. "Good Lord. Katherine Pierce was shot. Is she all right?" "She will be fine. The bullet went clean through and I was able to stitch her up. But she has been here recovering, and her father must be worried sick." "I should say so. Let me send this right away." Harold pulled out a form and a pencil. "What do you want it to say?" Lucas dictated a short message explaining that Katherine was safe and recovering at his ranch, and providing directions for how to find it. Harold sent it off immediately, then turned back to Lucas with an expression of undisguised curiosity. 2 weeks, you say? Katherine Pierce has been staying at your ranch for 2 weeks. She was too injured to move. I have been taking care of her." "I am sure you have," Harold said with a knowing look that made Lucas's jaw tighten. "It is not like that. I did not say it was. But you are a young man and she is a beautiful woman, and 2 weeks alone together, well, people are going to talk." "Let them talk," Lucas said evenly. "I did what anyone would have done. I saved her life." Harold held up his hands. "No need to get defensive. I am not judging. I am just saying, be prepared for questions. You know how people are." Lucas paid for the telegram and left, his mood soured by the conversation. Harold was right. People would talk. In a place like Green River where nothing much ever happened, the story of Katherine Pierce staying alone at his ranch would be the juiciest gossip in months. It might even damage her reputation, which was the last thing he wanted. When he got back to the ranch, Katherine was sitting on the porch enjoying the morning sun. She looked up when he approached, and the smile that lit her face made his heart skip. "You sent it?" "I sent it. Your father should get it by this afternoon at the latest. He will probably be here by tomorrow evening if he leaves right away." Katherine's smile faded slightly. "That fast? He will want to see for himself that you are all right. And Katherine, there is something else. The man at the telegraph office, Harold, he is a gossip. By tonight, everyone in Green River will know you have been staying here. That could cause problems for you, for your reputation." Katherine stood and came to him, taking his hands. "I do not care about my reputation. Let them talk. I know the truth, and so do you. That is all that matters. Your father might not see it that way. Then we will deal with my father together when he gets here. But I am not going to regret these past 2 weeks, Lucas. Not for anything." They spent the rest of the day preparing for Edmund Pierce's arrival. Katherine insisted on helping despite her injury, and together they cleaned the house, made up the spare bedroom, and prepared a meal. It felt domestic and right, working side by side like this, and Lucas found himself imagining a future where this was their everyday life. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Katherine leaned against him and said, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I meant everything I said. I love you and I want to be with you." "I love you too," Lucas said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "And I will do whatever it takes to make this work. I promise you that." They stayed like that until the cold drove them inside, neither wanting to let go, both of them aware that tomorrow would bring change for better or worse. Edmund Pierce arrived late the next afternoon, riding hard and accompanied by a man Lucas recognized as Sheriff Tom Donovan from Cheyenne. They both looked grim and rode weary, and Lucas felt his stomach clench with apprehension as they dismounted in front of the house. Katherine had heard the horses and came out onto the porch, moving carefully but under her own power. "Father," she called, and Edmund Pierce's face transformed, all the hard lines melting into relief and love. "Katherine," he breathed, and then he was up the steps and pulling her into a careful embrace, mindful of her injury. Thank God you are alive. When you did not arrive in Rock Springs and no one had heard from you, I thought the worst." "I am all right, Father. Lucas saved my life." Edmund released his daughter and turned to look at Lucas with assessing eyes. He was a tall man in his early 50s, with silver hair and the kind of bearing that came from years of commanding courtrooms. Lucas met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "Mr. Kane," Edmund said, extending his hand, "I owe you a debt I can never repay. My daughter is everything to me." Lucas shook his hand, surprised by the warmth in his grip. "Anyone would have done the same, sir. She is a remarkable woman. You raised her well." "That I did." Edmund looked between them, and Lucas saw the moment when understanding dawned in his eyes. "I see. Well, perhaps we should go inside and you can tell me exactly what happened." They settled in the main room, Katherine on the sofa with her father beside her, Lucas in a chair across from them, and Sheriff Donovan standing near the door. Katherine told the story of the ambush, describing the men as best she could, though with their faces covered there was little to go on. The sheriff took notes, asking pointed questions about the location and the exact time. "We have had reports of a gang working that stretch of road," Donovan said. "They seem to be targeting specific travelers, which suggests they are working with inside information." "Miss Pierce, you said they seem to be looking for something specific in your saddlebags." "Yes. They tore through everything, cursing when they did not find what they wanted. Then they threw all the documents into the wind and rode off." Edmund frowned. "What documents were you carrying?" "The Morrison property deed, the Hanson contract, and the Blackwell affidavits. Nothing that should have been of interest to common thieves." "Unless they were not common thieves," Edmund said slowly. "The Morrison property is valuable riverfront land. There has been a dispute over the boundaries for months. If someone wanted to stop that deed from being filed, killing the messenger and destroying the documents would certainly do it." "That is attempted murder over a property line," the sheriff said. "I will need to investigate this further, starting with whoever stands to benefit if that deed does not get filed. Mr. Pierce, I will need copies of all the relevant paperwork." "Of course. Katherine, do you think you are well enough to travel? I want to get you home where you can rest properly." Katherine looked at Lucas and he saw the plea in her eyes. He gave a tiny nod and she squared her shoulders. "Actually, Father, I need to talk to you about that. I am not coming back to Cheyenne, at least not permanently." Edmund went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Lucas and I have fallen in love. I want to stay here with him. I want to marry him." The silence that followed was deafening. Edmund looked at his daughter, then at Lucas, then back at his daughter. "You have known this man for 2 weeks, I know." 2 weeks, Katherine. "You cannot possibly know your own heart in such a short time." "I know it seems fast," Katherine said, "but Father, I have never been more certain of anything. When I thought I was going to die out there in the dirt, I realized how short life is, how precious. I do not want to waste another moment being anything other than happy, and Lucas makes me happy." Edmund turned his gaze on Lucas, and there was steel in his eyes now. "Mr. Kane, you seem like a decent man, and I am grateful for what you did for my daughter, but you must understand my position. She is my only child. I have spent her whole life protecting her, giving her opportunities, preparing her for a future. And now you are asking me to hand her over to a life of isolation and hardship on a cattle ranch in the middle of nowhere." "I am not asking you to hand her over, sir," Lucas said quietly. "I am asking for your blessing to marry the woman I love, but with or without it, I intend to spend the rest of my life with her if she will have me, because she is right. Life is too short and too precious to let this go. You are asking me to trust that you will take care of her, that you will make her happy, that you will give her a good life. But you are a stranger to me. How do I know you are worthy of her?" "You do not," Lucas admitted. "All I can do is tell you that I love her more than anything, that I will work every day to be worthy of her, and that I will never take her for granted. I know I do not have much to offer. This ranch is small, the house is modest, and the life is hard. But I will give her everything I have, and I will love her with everything I am." Katherine reached out and took her father's hand. "Father, please, I know this is not what you planned for me. I know you had hopes that I would marry someone in town, someone successful and established. But I do not want that life. I want this one. I want Lucas. Please say you understand. Please say you will support us." Edmund looked at his daughter for a long moment, and Lucas saw the war playing out behind his eyes. The lawyer who wanted to protect his investment, his legacy. The father who wanted his daughter to be safe and happy. Finally, he sighed and squeezed Catherine's hand. "You are certain about this?" "Absolutely certain. I am. And you, Mr. Kane, you understand what you are taking on. My daughter is brilliant and stubborn and used to having her own way. She will drive you crazy." "I am counting on it, sir," Lucas said with a small smile. Edmund shook his head, but there was a hint of warmth in his expression now. "Very well. If this is what you both want, I will not stand in your way, but I have conditions." "Name them," Lucas said. "First, you will wait at least 3 months before you marry. If you still feel the same way after 3 months of really getting to know each other, not just these 2 weeks of heightened emotion and drama, then I will give you my full blessing. Second, Katherine will write to me every week so I know she is well. And third, you will promise me, right here and now, that if this does not work out, if she decides ranch life is not for her, you will not make her feel guilty about leaving. You will let her go." "I promise," Lucas said without hesitation. "Though I do not think I will need to keep that particular promise. Katherine is stronger than you think." "I know exactly how strong my daughter is," Edmund said. "That is the only reason I am agreeing to this insanity." Katherine threw her arms around her father, careful of her injury. Thank you so much. You will see, Father, this is going to work. I am going to be happy." "You had better be," Edmund said gruffly, holding her close. "Because if he breaks your heart, I will make sure he regrets it." "Duly noted, sir," Lucas said, and Edmund actually laughed. They spent the rest of the evening making plans. Katherine would return to Cheyenne with her father for a few weeks to recover fully and to give Lucas time to prepare the ranch for her permanent arrival. During that time, they would write to each other, and Edmund would have the opportunity to look into Lucas's background and reputation. It was a compromise that satisfied everyone, even if Lucas hated the idea of being separated from Katherine, even for a short time. The sheriff left to begin his investigation, promising to keep them informed of any developments. Edmund stayed the night in the spare bedroom, and the next morning he helped Katherine pack the few belongings Lucas had been able to salvage from the ambush site. "Take care of yourself," Lucas said as he held Katherine one last time before she climbed into her father's wagon. "And write to me, every day if you can." "Every day," she promised. "And you take care of yourself too. Do not work too hard. Do not take any unnecessary risks. I need you in one piece when I come back." "I will be here," Lucas said, "waiting for you, counting the days." They kissed, and Lucas did not care that her father and half of Green River could probably see them. Let them talk. Katherine was his future, and he was not ashamed of that. As the wagon pulled away, Katherine turned to wave at him, and Lucas waved back, watching until they disappeared over the horizon. Then he turned and looked at his ranch with new eyes. He had work to do. If Katherine was going to live here, he wanted to make it a place worthy of her. Over the next 3 weeks, Lucas worked harder than he ever had in his life. He repaired the roof, replaced the worn floorboards, painted the walls. He built Katherine a writing desk for the spare room so she would have a place to work if she wanted to continue helping her father with legal matters. He bought fabric in town and attempted to make curtains, which turned out terribly but made Tom laugh until he cried when he saw them. "Boss, I think you should stick to cattle," Tom said, wiping tears from his eyes. "Leave the sewing to Miss Katherine." "She is going to hate them," Lucas agreed, looking at the crooked, uneven curtains with dismay. "She is going to love them," Tom corrected, "because you made them for her. That is what matters." Lucas hoped he was right. He had received 3 letters from Katherine since she left, each one filled with news and love and longing. She was healing well, she said. The doctor in Cheyenne had examined her wounds and declared them nicely healed, with minimal scarring. She was helping her father in the office again, but she missed the ranch, missed him, missed the wide open spaces and the quiet. "I never realized how noisy Cheyenne is," she wrote in her 3rd letter. "All the wagons and horses and people, it is exhausting. I find myself dreaming of your porch at sunset, with nothing but the wind and the crickets for company. I dream of you, Lucas, every night. I cannot wait to come home, because that is what your ranch is now. Home. I hope you do not mind that I am claiming it as such, but I have decided I do not care if you mind. You will just have to get used to having me there." Lucas had read that letter at least a dozen times, smiling like a fool each time. She wanted his ranch to be her home. She was dreaming of him. The thought filled him with joy and terror in equal measure. What if he could not make her happy? What if she got lonely or bored or regretted her decision? He knew he could not survive losing her now, not after having her in his life. But his fears were eased somewhat when Edmund Pierce paid him an unexpected visit at the end of the 3rd week. The older man arrived alone this time, riding up to the ranch on a fine bay gelding. "Mr. Pierce," Lucas said, surprised, "I was not expecting you." "I wanted to see the place again," Edmund said, dismounting. "To really see it without the worry clouding my judgment. Do you mind if I look around?" "Of course not. Would you like some coffee?" They sat on the porch with coffee and the cookies Lucas had attempted to bake, which were slightly burned but edible. Edmund looked out at the land, taking in the corrals and the barn, the cattle grazing in the distance, the mountains rising up on the horizon. "It is beautiful," he said finally. "I can see why Katherine loves it here. I hope she will continue to love it when the reality sets in. The winters are hard, Mr. Pierce, and the work never ends. It is not an easy life." "No, but it is an honest one. I have been making inquiries about you, Mr. Kane. Asking around, talking to people who know you. Do you know what they told me?" Lucas shook his head. "They said you are a good man. Honest, hardworking, fair in your dealings. They said your parents raised you right and that you have done a remarkable job keeping this place running on your own. They said you are exactly the kind of man they would want their own daughters to marry if they had daughters." Edmund set down his coffee cup and looked at Lucas directly. "I also know that you had an offer to sell this place last year for a very good price. But you turned it down because you could not bear to see it go to someone who would not care for it the way your family has. That tells me a lot about your character and your loyalty." "I do not understand, sir. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that I approve. Fully and without reservation. My daughter has chosen well. I have no doubt that you will make her happy, and that is all I have ever wanted for her." Edmund extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, son." Lucas shook his hand, feeling a wave of relief and gratitude wash over him. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." "There is one more thing," Edmund said, reaching into his coat pocket. "Katherine's mother left her a ring when she died. I have been holding on to it, waiting for the right moment. I think that moment has come." He pulled out a small velvet box and handed it to Lucas. "It would mean a lot to both of us if Katherine wore her mother's ring." Lucas opened the box and found a beautiful gold ring with a single small diamond, simple and elegant. "It is perfect, thank you. Just promise me one thing," Edmund said, his voice suddenly serious. Promise me you will be patient with her. She is going to want to be useful, to contribute, to work alongside you. Do not make the mistake of trying to protect her too much or shelter her from the realities of this life. She will resent you for it. Let her be your partner in every sense of the word. I promise, Lucas said. I know exactly who Katherine is, and I would never try to change that. It is one of the things I love most about her. Edmund nodded, satisfied. Good. Then I will leave you to your preparations. Katherine plans to return in 2 weeks. She is driving me crazy with her impatience, so you might want to write and tell her she can come sooner if you are ready. I will write to her tonight, Lucas said. And sir, thank you again, for everything, for trusting me with her. Just make her happy, son. That is all the thanks I need. After Edmund left, Lucas sat on the porch for a long time, turning the ring box over in his hands. In 2 weeks, Katherine would be here to stay. They would be married. She would be his wife and he would be her husband, and they would build a life together on this ranch. The thought filled him with equal parts joy and terror, but mostly joy. Overwhelming, breathtaking joy. He wrote to Katherine that night, a long letter telling her about her father's visit and his blessing, about the ring he now held in trust for her, about how much he missed her and loved her. He told her to come whenever she was ready, that he had been ready for her since the moment she crawled into his life with blood on her dress. Katherine's response arrived 3 days later, delivered by Tom, who had picked it up in town. It was short and to the point. I am coming home. I will arrive on the 15th. Tell the preacher, I love you, Kay. The 15th was just over a week away. Lucas felt his heart race as he calculated everything that needed to be done. He needed to talk to Reverend Matthews about performing the ceremony, needed to finish the last few repairs on the house, needed to buy a proper bed frame because he would be damned if he brought his bride home to just a mattress on the floor. He rode into Green River the next day and found the Reverend at the church, a small wooden building that served the scattered ranches and homesteads in the area. Reverend Matthews was a kind man in his 60s who had baptized Lucas as a baby and buried both his parents. Lucas, he said warmly. What brings you to town? It has been some time since I saw you at Sunday service. I am sorry about that, Reverend. The ranch keeps me busy, but I am here because I need to ask you something. Would you be willing to perform a wedding ceremony at my ranch on the 15th? Reverend Matthews' eyebrows rose. A wedding? Well, this is wonderful news. Who is the lucky bride? Katherine Pierce. Edmund Pierce's daughter from Cheyenne. Ah, yes, I heard about what happened to her on the road. Terrible business, but I also heard you saved her life. That was a brave and noble thing you did, son. She is easy to be brave for, Lucas said simply. She is remarkable, Reverend. I know we have not known each other long, but I love her. I want to build a life with her. Will you marry us? It would be my honor, the Reverend said. Shall we say 3 o'clock on the 15th? That should give me time to make the ride out to your place. 3 o'clock is perfect. Thank you, Reverend. Lucas spent the rest of the week in a flurry of activity. He bought the bed frame and new linens. He stocked the pantry with enough food to last through the winter. He even bought a rocking chair because Katherine had mentioned in one of her letters that her grandmother used to sit in a rocking chair on the porch in the evenings, and Katherine had loved that memory. Tom helped him move furniture and clean the barn, and he very tactfully did not tease Lucas about his nervousness, though Lucas caught him smiling more than once. You are a good friend, Lucas told him on the 14th, as they finished the last of the preparations. You are going to be happy, boss, Tom said. Miss Katherine is something special. You two are going to do just fine. The 15th dawned clear and beautiful, a perfect September day with just a hint of autumn in the air. Lucas woke at dawn, too nervous to sleep any longer. He shaved and dressed in his best clothes, a clean white shirt, and his only suit, which he had not worn since his father's funeral. He checked and rechecked the house, making sure everything was perfect. Reverend Matthews arrived at 2:30, and they waited together on the porch. Lucas kept looking at the road, watching for the dust cloud that would signal an approaching wagon. "Nervous?" the Reverend asked with a kind smile. "Terrified," Lucas admitted. "What if she changed her mind?" "She did not change her mind. That much I can tell you with certainty. A woman who changes her mind does not send a telegram telling you to have the preacher ready." "I suppose that is true." "This is natural, what you are feeling. Marriage is a big step, but from what I have heard, you two are well suited. You will be fine." At 2:45, Lucas finally saw it. A wagon in the distance, moving fast. His heart began to pound as it grew closer, and then he could see her. Katherine, sitting beside her father, her dark hair blowing in the wind, a smile on her face that he could see even from this distance. Edmund pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house, and Katherine was down before he could even set the brake properly. She ran to Lucas, and he caught her in his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "You are here," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You are really here." "I am home," she said, and kissed him. They broke apart only when Edmund cleared his throat pointedly. "Save something for after the ceremony, you two. Reverend, good to see you again. Mr. Pierce, always a pleasure. Now shall we begin?" They stood on the porch, Katherine and Lucas, with Reverend Matthews in front of them and Edmund and Tom as their witnesses. The ceremony was simple and traditional, the words as old as time. Lucas held Katherine's hands and looked into her eyes as he promised to love her, honor her, protect her for all his days. And when it was her turn, Katherine's voice was clear and strong as she made the same promises. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Matthews said with a smile. "You may kiss your bride." Lucas cupped Katherine's face in his hands and kissed her softly, reverently, sealing their vows. When they broke apart, she was crying happy tears, and he brushed them away with his thumbs. "Mrs. Kane," he murmured. "Mr. Kane," she replied with a watery laugh. "How very proper we sound." They had a small celebration with the four men, eating the meal Lucas had prepared and drinking Edmund's gift of champagne. As the sun began to set, Edmund prepared to leave. "You will take care of her," he said to Lucas, though it was not really a question. "With my life," Lucas promised. Edmund hugged his daughter tightly. "Write to me, every week as promised." "I will, Father, I love you." "I love you too, Katie girl, be happy." They waved as Edmund drove away, and then it was just the two of them. Lucas and Katherine, husband and wife, standing on the porch of their home as the stars began to come out. "Would you like to see what I have done to the place?" Lucas asked. "I would love to." He showed her everything. The new desk in what was now her study, the rocking chair on the porch, the terrible curtains that he had tried to make, which made her laugh and cry at the same time, the new bed with its warm quilts and soft pillows. "Lucas, it is perfect," she said, looking around their bedroom with shining eyes. "Everything is perfect." "You are perfect," he said, pulling her close. "I cannot believe you are really here, that you are really mine." "I am yours," she whispered, "and you are mine, for always." They made love that night as husband and wife, taking their time to learn each other's bodies, to discover what brought pleasure and joy. It was sweet and tender and passionate all at once, and afterwards, Katherine lay in Lucas's arms and felt more complete than she had ever felt in her life. "I love you," she said, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingertip. "I love you too. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "You think we are crazy, getting married so fast." "Probably," Lucas said with a laugh. "But I do not care, this feels right, you feel right." "Good," Katherine said, pressing a kiss to his heart. "Because I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me now." "That is all I want," Lucas said, "to be stuck with you for the rest of my life." The first year of their marriage was an adjustment for both of them. Katherine had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, the endless cycle of work that came with raising cattle and maintaining the land. Lucas had been right when he said the winters were harsh. That first winter tested them both, with weeks of heavy snow that left them isolated and cabin-bound. But they learned to appreciate the enforced closeness, spending long evenings reading together by the fire, playing chess and cards, talking for hours about everything and nothing. Katherine threw herself into ranch life with characteristic determination. She learned to ride, not the gentle trail riding she had done in Cheyenne, but real ranch riding, helping to move cattle and check fence lines. She learned to shoot, becoming quite good with a rifle. She learned to cook hearty meals for hard-working men when Tom and the occasional hired hand joined them. And she continued her legal work, corresponding with her father and helping him research cases, transforming the small study Lucas had made for her into a proper office filled with law books and documents. Lucas watched her adapt and thrive with pride and love. She had been right. She was strong enough for this life. More than that, she seemed to bloom here, to become even more fully herself. The isolation that he had worried would drive her crazy seemed instead to free something in her. She was happy. They had their disagreements, of course. Katherine's stubborn streak clashed with Lucas's protective instincts more than once. There was a memorable argument when she insisted on riding out to check the south pasture despite an approaching storm, and an even more memorable one when Lucas suggested she should not be helping with the cattle branding because it was too dangerous. But they learned to fight fair, to listen to each other, to compromise. And they learned that making up after a fight could be quite enjoyable. In the spring of their second year together, Katherine realized she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after dinner, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "There is a baby in there," she said simply. "Our baby." Lucas felt his world tilt. A baby. He was going to be a father. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. I have suspected for a few weeks, but I wanted to be certain before I told you. The baby should come in early autumn." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "A baby," he breathed. "Katherine, we are going to have a baby." "We are. Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am terrified and thrilled and overwhelmed and so happy. He pulled back to look at her. "Are you happy? Is this what you want?" "It is exactly what I want," Katherine said. "A family with you, our own family." They wrote to Edmund immediately, and his response was full of joy and excitement. He promised to visit as soon as he could, and he sent books about childbirth and infant care, along with a huge box of baby clothes that had belonged to Katherine when she was small. The pregnancy was mostly easy, though Katherine chafed at Lucas's increased protectiveness. He wanted her to stop riding, stop doing heavy work, stop everything that might pose even the smallest risk. She reminded him tartly that women had been having babies while doing ranch work since the beginning of time, and she was not about to spend 7 months sitting in a rocking chair. They compromised. She agreed to be more careful, to ask for help when she needed it, to stop pushing herself so hard. He agreed to stop hovering and to trust that she knew her own limits. In October, as the leaves were turning gold and red, Katherine went into labor. Lucas sent Tom racing to Green River to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson, who had delivered most of the babies in the area for the past 30 years. Then he stayed by Katherine's side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement as she worked to bring their child into the world. It was the longest night of his life. Katherine was strong and brave, but he could see how much she was suffering, and he felt helpless to do anything but be there. When Mrs. Henderson finally said, "One more push, dear, just one more," Lucas held his breath. And then there was a cry. Not Katherine's cry, but a new cry, the cry of their son entering the world. "You have a boy," Mrs. Henderson announced, placing the squalling, red-faced baby on Katherine's chest. A healthy baby boy. Lucas looked down at his wife and his son and felt tears stream down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. You did it." "We did it," Katherine corrected, her own face wet with tears as she cradled their baby. "Lucas, look at him. Look at our son." They named him Henry Edmund Kane, after Lucas's father and Katherine's. He had dark hair like his mother and his father's blue eyes, and from the very first day, he had his parents wrapped around his tiny fingers. Edmund came to visit when Henry was 2 weeks old, and Lucas watched as the stern attorney melted at the sight of his grandson. He held the baby with surprising gentleness, telling him stories about his grandmother and promising to teach him to read law books as soon as he was old enough. "You have done well," Edmund told Katherine and Lucas as they sat together in the warm ranch house. "Both of you. This is a good life you have built, a good family." "We have been blessed," Lucas agreed, watching as Katherine nursed their son, her face soft with love and contentment. As Henry grew from a baby to a toddler to a boy, the ranch grew too. Lucas bought more land, more cattle. Katherine helped him negotiate the deals, her legal mind and sharp instincts making her an invaluable partner. They hired another full-time hand to help with the increased workload, and the ranch began to prosper in ways it never had before. When Henry was 3, Katherine became pregnant again, and this time they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah Rose. She had her mother's hazel eyes and her father's quiet determination, and she was adored by her older brother who appointed himself her protector from the moment she was born. Life was not always easy. There were hard years when the cattle prices dropped, dry years when the grass failed, cold years when they lost stock to the brutal winter. There were sick children and broken bones, and all the usual crises that came with ranch life. But through it all, Lucas and Katherine faced everything together, their love growing deeper and stronger with each passing year. They added onto the house as the family grew, building more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Katherine turned the porch into a favorite gathering place, where she would sit in her rocking chair on summer evenings with Lucas beside her, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set over the mountains. "You ever miss Cheyenne?" Lucas asked her one such evening when they had been married for 10 years. Katherine thought about it, then shook her head. "No. This is where I am meant to be, with you, with our children on this land. This is home. No regrets, not a single one." She took his hand and squeezed it. "You." "Only that I did not find you sooner," Lucas said. "I would have liked more years with you." "We have many years ahead of us still," Katherine said, "and I intend to fill every one of them with love and laughter and joy." "That sounds perfect to me." As their children grew older, Henry showed a natural aptitude for ranching, loving the land and the animals as much as his father did. Sarah, on the other hand, had inherited her mother's love of books and learning. She would sit in Katherine's study for hours, reading law books and asking endless questions. Edmund was delighted when Katherine wrote to tell him that Sarah wanted to be an attorney like her grandfather. "I will teach her everything I know," Edmund wrote back. "When she is old enough, she can come to Cheyenne and clerk for me, just like her mother did. The Pierce legal tradition will continue." But that was still years away. For now, the children were young and the days were full, and Lucas and Katherine were happy beyond measure. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Katherine back to the place where he had first found her, the spot where she had collapsed after crawling across the desert with blood on her dress. They stood there together, looking out at the land that stretched away in all directions. "I was so scared that day," Lucas said. "I thought I might lose you before I even really found you. But you did not lose me. You saved me, in more ways than one." Katherine leaned against him. "I was living half a life before I met you. Going through the motions but never really feeling anything deeply. And then I was shot and nearly died, and it woke me up. It made me realize that life is too precious to waste on anything less than what makes you truly happy." "I am so grateful that what makes you happy is me," Lucas said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Always you," Katherine said. "For the rest of my life it will always be you." They stood there for a while longer, then walked back to their horses and rode home together, side by side, as they had been for 15 years and would be for all the years to come. The ranch continued to thrive under their combined stewardship. They became known throughout the region as fair employers and good neighbors, always willing to help others in need. Lucas often thought about how his mother would have been proud of the home they had created, the family they had built. Henry was 16 when he asked if he could take over more responsibility on the ranch. He wanted to be a true partner to his father, not just a helper. Lucas agreed, and together they worked side by side, father and son, building something that would last for generations. Sarah was 14 and already helping her mother with legal work, her sharp mind catching details that even Katherine sometimes missed. Edmund wrote often, praising his granddaughter's abilities and reminding everyone that she had a place in his firm whenever she was ready. On a warm June evening, when Lucas was 50 and Katherine was 47, they sat on their porch and watched the sunset, just as they had done countless times before. Their children were grown now, both off visiting friends, and the house was quiet in a way it had not been in years. "Do you remember the day we met?" Katherine asked, her hand in his. "Every detail," Lucas said. "I remember seeing you crawling toward the house, remember how terrified I was that I would not be able to save you. I remember stitching up your wounds and praying. I remember the moment you opened your eyes and looked at me, and feeling like my whole world had shifted. I remember thinking that if I survived, if I made it through that day, I would never take another moment for granted. I would live fully and love deeply and be grateful for every blessing." She turned to look at him, her hazel eyes still as bright and beautiful as they had been that first day. "I have kept that promise, Lucas. Every single day for the past 22 years, I have been grateful. For you, for our children, for this life we built together." "We have been blessed," Lucas agreed. "More than I ever dared to hope for when I was a lonely cowboy working this ranch alone." "You were never meant to be alone," Katherine said. "You were meant to find me, or for me to find you, however you want to look at it." "I prefer to think we found each other," Lucas said. "That somehow, despite all the things that could have gone wrong, we both ended up exactly where we were supposed to be." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars come out one by one. The future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility. There would be grandchildren eventually, more years of work and joy and all the ordinary miracles that made up a life well lived. But for now, in this moment, there was just the two of them. Lucas and Katherine Kane, cowboy and lawyer's daughter, husband and wife, partners in every sense of the word. Two people who had found each other against all odds and had built something beautiful and lasting. "I love you," Lucas said, as he had said countless times before and would say countless times again. "I love you too," Katherine replied, as she always had and always would. And as the Wyoming night settled around them, full of stars and promise, they knew with absolute certainty that their love story was far from over. It was still being written, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one heartbeat at a time. And it would continue to be written for all the days they had left, a testament to the power of love, courage, and the choice to live fully no matter what life throws at you. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. Edmund Pierce lived to be 78, long enough to see his granddaughter Sarah accepted to law school back east, the first woman in the family to pursue that path officially. He passed peacefully in his sleep, and Katherine mourned him deeply, but found comfort in knowing he had been proud of the life she had chosen, proud of the family she had created. Henry married at 23, bringing home a sweet-natured woman named Martha who took to ranch life naturally. They gave Lucas and Katherine their first grandchild, a boy they named Lucas Edmond, and Katherine cried happy tears at the naming, at the continuation of the legacy. Sarah did indeed become an attorney, eventually returning to Wyoming to open her own practice in Cheyenne. She never married, claiming she was too busy changing the world to worry about romance, but she visited the ranch often, always with new stories about the cases she was winning and the precedents she was setting. Lucas and Katherine grew old together gracefully, their love never dimming even as their hair turned gray and their steps grew slower. They still sat on the porch every evening when weather permitted, still held hands like newlyweds, still looked at each other with the same wonder and gratitude they had felt that first day. When Lucas was 72 and Katherine was 69, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a huge party at the ranch. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren ran through the yard. Neighbors from all over the county came to celebrate the couple who had become legends in their own right, not for anything dramatic or extraordinary, but simply for the way they had loved each other faithfully and well for half a century. Tom, now an old man himself, made a toast. I remember the day Lucas came to me, all nervous and excited, telling me about the woman who had literally crawled to his doorstep. I remember thinking he was crazy for falling in love so fast, but I was wrong. What Lucas and Katherine have is not crazy, it is miraculous. It is proof that sometimes when you know, you just know. And when you are brave enough to act on that knowing, magic happens. That night, as they lay in bed together in the house they had shared for 50 years, Katherine curled against Lucas's side as she had done countless times before. 50 years, she marveled. How did we get so lucky? I do not know, Lucas admitted, but I would not change a single moment of it. Well, maybe the part where you got shot. I could have done without that, Katherine laughed. But if I had not been shot, I might never have found you. So perhaps even that was meant to be. You would have found me eventually, Lucas said with certainty. We were meant to be together. The universe would have figured out a way. I like that, Katherine said. The idea that we were always meant to find each other. Not just find each other, Lucas corrected. Meant to love each other, meant to build this life together, meant to create this family and this legacy. All of it was meant to be. They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever time they had left would be spent exactly as they wanted to spend it, together. Lucas Kane lived to be 81 years old, passing away on a sunny spring morning with his wife holding his hand and his children surrounding his bed. His last words were, "I love you," directed at Katherine, who kissed his forehead and whispered, "I love you too. I will see you again." Katherine lived another 5 years after that, staying on the ranch that had been her home for more than 50 years. She was surrounded by family, supported by her children and grandchildren who made sure she was never alone unless she wanted to be. She spent her days writing letters, reading, and sitting on the porch in her rocking chair, remembering the life she had lived and the man she had loved. On the day she died, peacefully in her sleep at age 86, she was wearing the gold ring Lucas had given her on their wedding day, the ring that had belonged to her mother. And on her bedside table was a worn photograph of Lucas, young and handsome in his wedding suit, looking at the camera with love in his eyes. They buried her next to Lucas on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a simple stone marker that read, Katherine Pierce Kane. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She crawled to his ranch with blood on her dress. He carried her inside and prayed. Together they built a love that lasted forever. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story, but never forgetting the foundation that Lucas and Katherine had laid. The house was expanded and modernized over the years, but the porch remained, with its rocking chairs where Lucas and Katherine had spent so many evenings watching the sunset. And on quiet nights, when the wind blew just right across the Wyoming prairie, people swore they could still feel their presence there, could still sense the love that had filled that place for so many years. It was a love that had started with an act of desperation and courage, a woman crawling toward hope with blood on her dress. A love that had been answered by a cowboy who carried her inside and prayed for her life. A love that had grown into something magnificent and enduring, something that would echo through the generations long after they were gone. It was a love story for the ages, simple and true, a testament to the power of choosing love even when everything seems impossible. And it all started on that hot June day in 1879, when Katherine Pierce crawled to Lucas Kane's ranch, and he made the choice to save her. In doing so, he saved himself too, finding the other half of his soul, the person he was meant to spend his life loving. And they lived happily ever after, just as they were always meant to do.